Welcome back to the English Scholar Online Camp. This video is a continuation in our discussion about auxiliary verbs in Part 3-B. We already finished discussing the 9 modal auxiliary verbs. We also came to know that there were two types of auxiliary verbs, the modal auxiliary verbs and the semi-modal auxiliary verbs. Now that we finished talking about modal auxiliary verbs, we are going to continue with semi-modal auxiliary verbs. We only have 4 semi-modal auxiliary verbs: dare, need, used to, and ought to. Before we go ahead, we would like to ask everyone to support us by hitting the subscribe button along with the notification bell so that you will be notified whenever we upload new videos. Let's start by having the first one, dare. Dare means to be brave, reckless, or rude enough to do or try something. When dare is used as a semi-modal verb, it does not need to be based with its subject. Regardless of the subject, singular or plural, the word dare should be left as it is. So when we use it in a sentence, it would be like this. Just treat it as any other modal auxiliary verbs. How dare he talk that way to my mother? Dare she make fun of my peas? When dare is used, it should be partnered with the main verb to give a complete thought of predicate. And when it is partnered with the main verb should also be left at its base form. Remember when we use will to form a future tense. She will buy a new bag. Will is a modal auxiliary verb, and it is partnered with the main verb buy. We notice that buy is left as it is. We didn't make it into buys even if our subject, she, is singular. That's because of the modal auxiliary verb. Another example, when we use the modal auxiliary verb should. When we use should in a sentence, the main verb partnered to it is also left at its original form. Example, she should buy a new bag. Even if our subject, she, is singular, we still left both the modal auxiliary verb should and main verb buy. Same goes with dare here. We leave both dare and its main verb at their original form. No addition and no deduction unless we are talking about past event. The dare should be made dared, and the main verb remains in its base form or original form. Let's have the second semi-modal auxiliary verb, need. Need, when used as a semi-auxiliary verb, same goes for the semi-modal auxiliary verb dare. It does not need to be based on its subject. Need is almost always used in negative sentences to express a lack of obligation or necessity, either taking the adverb not or paired with a negative word or phrase such as never, no one, nothing. For example, you need not worry about my health. No one need know about the issue. How do these sentences sound? Yes, they sound quite awkward, but they are grammatically correct. We notice some American people say sentences like this, and we might think they are not correct, but they actually are. We know you have objections in mind, but do not stop here. We have more to go for clarifications. The same with dare. When we pair need to main verbs, both the word need and also the main verb are left to their original forms. As we notice also, in these sentences, need is left the same, and the main verbs worry and know are left to their base or original forms as well. Let's have the third one, used to. Used to is used when we speak about a past habit, condition, or fact that is no longer the case. We can use the semi-modal used to with the base form of the verb. Same with need and dare. It needs not to be based from its subject. It should be left at its original form along with its main verb. For example, I used to eat ice cream every day when I was a kid. This just means that It was the case before that I keep eating ice cream every day, but no longer now. We used to visit New York every Christmas season. This sentence, since we used to, also means that it was just before that we go to New York every Christmas season, but no longer now. And we notice the pattern. Used to is always paired with the base form of the main verb, eat and visit, and they are also left on their original form. Let's have the fourth and last one, ought to. Ought to is used to express that something is viewed as correct, preferable, or necessary, or as probable, likely, or expected. Same with the first three semi-modal auxiliary verbs. It also needs not to be based from its subject. It should be left at its original form, plus the base form of its main verb. For example, she ought to submit her project tomorrow. They ought to get inside now. Notice that regardless of the subject, singular or plural, ought to remain the same and its main verbs, submit and get. So those are the ways and the patterns when we use these four as our helping verbs to the main verbs. But when we use these, dare, need, used to, and ought to as our main verbs, then this would be the time that the subject-verb agreement is followed. For dare and need, there are changes, but for ought to and used to, everything remains the same. So we'll tackle on dare and need only. So when we use dare or need as our main verb, it always needs to be partnered with do or any other action word in base form with to in between. For example, he dares to talk to my mother like that. Notice the word dare. An S is put after it to agree with its subject, which is he, a singular subject. Then followed by to and then the direct action talk in base form. Another example, we dare not to eat the cake. So even if it is negated by the word no, the rule still remains the same. The word dare remains in its original form since it needs to agree with its subject, we, which is plural, then followed by the word to, and then the direct action verb, eat, also in its base form. Remember the subject-verb agreement for this. If the subject is singular, our verb should also be singular. And usually, to make a verb singular, we put an S after its base form. So, since our main verb here is there, then we put an S to make it agree to its subject if the subject is singular. And we do not need to put an S if the subject is plural. Same thing we did with these two sample sentences. The same case should happen for need. If our subject is singular, we put an S after it to make it singular, and we do not put an S to make it plural. So if our subject is singular, need should also be singular, so it should be needs, then to, and then the other action verb in its original form. For example, she needs to buy a new dress. Our subject she is singular. That's why our verb need is also made singular. So it turned into needs, then followed by the word to, and then the other action verb buy in its original or base form. Another example, we need to buy groceries. Our subject here, which is we, is plural. Therefore, our main verb need should be plural as well. So we do not need to put an S, followed by to, then its other action verb buy in its base or original form. So that's how we use dare or need when used as main verbs. Let's stop there for now. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.